As someone working in the youth sector, there's a growing frustration amongst young people that decisions which directly affect them during coronavirus, such as employment, welfare, education, are the very decisions which we haven't had a chance to give an input into. So my question for the panel tonight is, why has there been no input sought from young people, especially since we're disproportionately affected by coronavirus?
Ahmed.
We have to give young people a seat on the table. When these decisions are being made on behalf of the young people, we can't just call the experts from the universities and the different experts from different organisations. We need to include young people who are affected.
So what can you tell them about handling this crisis that they're not hearing from all the experts that they are hearing from?
Look, you need to include young people. Young people are affected by the decisions that are made by government. You know what I mean? The grassroots communities, vulnerable young people, are being impacted daily. And what they say is, you know, no one understands my experiences. No one's, consulted us. No one. And there's another growing issue, which is, you know, we don't want to continue to be supported. We can support ourselves. We need to be empowered. We need to be given the opportunity to lead our communities and our young people. You know, young people can do a lot. We need to give them the resources required to ensure that they can make the impact they know about.
Kate, I'm interested in your perspective on this, because when you were campaigning on the water issues and the fish in Menindee Lakes, you were kind of demanding a seat at the table. Was that welcomed by the people that sort of hold the power, that make the big decisions?
At times, I suppose, but what we've experienced is that government doesn't really listen to people out in rural Australia. We've just seen in like our seat of Barwon, we saw a change from the Nationals for the first time in 69 years over to shooters, farmers, fishers, because we aren't getting represented. That's not just young people, that's rural people in general. And I think during this pandemic, we're seeing the exact same thing, that, you know, people aren't getting heard, and the amount of farmers that right now are out there kicking and screaming, trying to just get across the border and get their work done, like with these cross-community communities and things like that. But then also young people just trying to get to school. The amount of issues these people are facing, and their parents and them are trying to get onto politicians and work out how they can cross the border. And we're just not being heard right now. And it's amazing how, you know, it takes so much kicking and screaming for politicians to actually understand what's going on right now. And I've been really disappointed, to be honest. Like, you know, growing up, there's a lot of people that are disconnected when it comes to politics, that are young, and I think part of the reason is we just don't feel like we're ever getting heard.
Is that what you feel, Hamani?
Oh, 100%. Young people aren't being heard. There are certain organisations that do listen to young people, such as the YMCA and the Office of the Advocate for Children and Young People. But in general, other non-government organisations and government organisations aren't listening to young people, aren't bringing us into the conversation when it regards us. Like, a lot of people, especially on this show and on other shows, they say young people are the future. Okay, if we are the future, then why aren't we not part of the conversation?
Scott, I know you want to be in politics, you have had a crack at it, and you probably don't want to dump on the political parties, but you've got to acknowledge this. They don't deal with young people in the same way they do, you know, big business or the unions either.
Hamish, I think taking personal responsibility is a very, very important ethic to have.
That's why you're a Liberal.
That's right.
But don't give me a political answer on this. Give me your personal view on whether you feel young people are being heard in this crisis.
I think we're not being heard enough, and I feel like we need to be solutions-orientated, whether it's Kate, whether it's whoever it is here and watching tonight. I feel like, how do we be heard? And I think it's so important.
But if you're not even in the parliament...
Pardon?
You know, if young people aren't even in the parliament,
they're not.
Those were some of the youngest people that are in federal politics. One of them can't even get to Canberra to sit, and because they can't, they're not allowed to vote.
Well, I think one of the practical things young people can do is sign up to a political party, and it doesn't matter if it's the Greens, the Labor Party or the Liberal Party. I think change has to come from within, and that's why I joined the Liberal Party.
Kate's shaking her head. Why?
We've dealt a lot with a lot of different parties, and in all honesty, like, you know, I see myself one day potentially going down that path, but I think there's a lot of strength not being involved in political parties as well. When it comes to the water issues that we're experiencing, we work with all different, you know, people from different walks of life when it comes to politics, and I think that's one of our strengths, and that's right now with us trying to get kids across the border. I've been working today, speaking closely with the Isolated Children's and Parents Association, and they are apolitical, because that is sometimes the the most important way to be, because you can speak to everyone and get your message across. The idea that we have to get into politics to make change, it's not always the case.
Ahmed, can you do more outside politics than in?
You can do more outside politics, and I've seen it within my work, working with all sides of politics, and you know, advocacy is a very important part of community work. But the problem is, you can speak to all these politicians, but I think you know, change is very hard to come, and what we need to do is we rely very much on different people to kind of support the message, and I think, you know, we just need to continue pushing and working with all sides of politics, because I think that's the best way forward.
Hamish, can I make a quick point on joining a political party? I think we've got to view it in two sort of separate channels. The first channel is when you join a party, you do get a say. You get to turn up to branch meetings, you get to move policy motions, you get to propose policy motions. Now, for example, if you're
But then when you come on a program like this, you have to sort of wheel out the political lines rather than saying what you genuinely believe.
Well, what I genuinely believe, Hamish, is the fact that if you got, you know, 100 or 200 or 300 of your friends to join a party that has a firm belief, for example, in renewable energy or small business, then that has an impact on what the party thinks. And it might just be a ripple, but it's a little bit. And I think, second of all, I think, you know, being a political activist in the Liberal Party, I think parties need to make it simpler for people to join, understand the processes, and if you join, you don't have to hand out a flyer on election day. You could be someone that turns up to a meeting.
You believe strongly in renewable energy, in a greener future. Do you really believe you can change the direction of the Liberal Party?
Undoubtedly, absolutely, Hamish, of course.
Why?
And I think our Minister, Matt Keane, in New South Wales is leading the charge. I think undoubtedly we're heading that way, 100%.
I think the reality is that young people have switched off when it comes to politics. I know a lot of people that don't even bother voting now. They just say, oh, we'll just cop the fine. Because we don't, well, personally, and I know a lot of people my age, we don't trust politicians. You know, we don't see transparency, and I see this a lot when it comes to water. We've seen a lot of alleged corruption and big issues coming out. There's a real lack of trust and there's a lack of transparency. And yeah, I think it's no wonder that a lot of young people have turned off from politics.
Hamani, do you trust politicians?
Yes and no. There are certain politicians...
That's a very political answer.
Yes and no. Be quite honest, some politicians aren't doing their jobs when it comes to own electorates. It comes to the young people especially. I know for a good example of politicians listening is last year I was part of the New South Wales Youth Parliament program with the YMCA. I was fortunate enough to be the youth premier, and seeing so many young people from across this state coming together and working on bills and private member statements, being so passionate about different issues. For example, I was part of the Aboriginal Affairs Committee and we proposed a bill for an Aboriginal Education Advisory Board in all New South Wales schools, both public and private, so Aboriginal people and especially Aboriginal young students can have a say what goes on in their own school. And that's one of many examples. And there's quite a lot of youth parliament programs across this country. Is that politicians need to kick up the butt and listen and actually attend some of these sessions and some of these programs and listen to these young people, because as they say, we are the future.